before we all get carried away with this manenoza by-election, let me remind you that this week alone, it has been reported that 300 billion that was raised through the treasury bonds by government cannot be traced. Like, we cannot be told where it went, how it was used, under what purpose. 300 billion Kenya shillings. Number two, I'm sure we've all seen the video of the MP from Mosop saying the way he almost died in a Kenyan hospital because of consuming counterfeit medicine. Actually, the only reason he survived is because he went to a hospital in Dubai. They're the ones that flashed his SIM system and gave him legit medicine. You see that political class is able to afford Dubai hospitals. You can imagine what we've been consuming locally. Bad governance affects everybody, even in the political class. Mswaisa hao hiyo.
Majama, mimi naomba Kenya, ukora na ugondiko juu. Wewe unasikia over 300 billion enye gava wali raise through bond imepotea. Majama walikinya. Hii Kenya kitu ni mgondi, ni space una time ndio watu wanaga. Mtu akipata space ana chai. 300 billion mjamaa. Bulanda.
Wadau ni kubaya. It's like corruption imekuwa normal Kenya. Yaani unasikia 300 billion raised na bonds zimedisappear tu hivyo. Wewe mama wa auditing Nyakango anasema hiyo do, yani they can't trace where the money is. Mmoja kuna yenzi 1 million ikipotea tukao tunasema when you do more. Sasa hivi we are talking about billions. Na hii 300 billion imepotea tu hivyo. Kuna msi anasema EACC imenyamaza, ODPP imenyamaza, OPP imenyamaza. You know, hizo ofisi zote zinafaa kudili na corruption. Zimenyamaza. Nobody is talking about it. Judiciary is quiet, the president is quiet. Everyone is quiet. Mpaka raia wamenyamaza. Nobody is talking about this story. Ni kama normalize corruption. It's like it's normal. It's normal and nobody cares. Hili mambo gani man? 300 billion. Maze, uongea baadaye.
You cannot begin to imagine the gravity of what we are dealing with as a nation in terms of looting. So the Office of the Auditor General made claims that the government of Kenya has lost 300 billion between 2017 and 2023, money collected in government bonds. So in simpler terms, 300 billion Kenyan shillings cannot be traced. It cannot be accounted for. In other words, it was looted. And you know, we have normalized this kind of looting to the extent that EACC is quiet, the ODPP is quiet, the DCI is also quiet. Yesterday, Ndindi Nyoro in Parliament said that the presidential figures that were given on economic growth and the strengthening of the shilling were actually cooked. And on top of that, he also said that Kenya borrows 3.5 billion every day. That's how cooked we are as a country that emulates Singapore and Malaysia.
This is a new day for you to receive another scandal from Kenya Kwanza goons. As we speak, 300 billion in government bonds have allegedly gone missing. You don't even have to take my word for it. Just check out this post from Senior Counsel Paul Mwite, and I quote. So I'll start off with this image he has attached to his tweet, which reads, Audit. 300 billion raised through government bonds cannot be traced. Now this is Margaret Nyakango, who has come out with this expose. And then Senior Counsel Paul Mwite is saying, diplomatic way of saying stolen. Who has the capacity to walk away with 300 billion of government bonds without Treasury and CBK's knowledge/complicity? Kenyans are now almost numb with this looting. Mind-boggling impunity. Mtadu? ? Now in line with that, in this video I want us to look into some of the repercussions of this highway robbery and also where those funds could have gone to. And so with no further ado, let's get after it. So first up, where did the money go? My top suspicion is that the national government has probably defaulted on one or two of its foreign debts. And as such, they have raided the bonds which banks and private citizens give them. Because they know it will be a while before people notice the cash is missing, because, you know, mostly the general agreement between the government and the private sector is that, look, we secure the principal, you only get it back after X amount of years, but we will only pay you the interest twice a year. So the government is hoping you won't notice the principal is missing because it's yet to mature. But this is just like dominoes. First, they will steal the principal, keep you busy with the interest. Then they will come for your bank savings, and eventually even your own M-Pesa account because they have probably defaulted on foreign debt. Jimmy Wanjigi explained this issue very well in regards to what happened to Ghana and how it could also happen to us one day. Just listen to this video very, very carefully, and if you can, download it and keep it somewhere because it might come to pass based on what I'm seeing. Just check out this tip.
We are teetering on what is called debt default. And I think Kenyans need to understand what that means to our lives. Ghana recently, December, went through a modicum of debt default. They could not meet their debt obligations. So what did Ghana do? They went to the IMF. And the IMF told them, before we look at you dealing with your debts, the sovereign in your country must understand and feel the pain first. Yes, CT. So Ghana calls in their bonds and says, now if you have a bond of 10,000 shillings, you now take it at a discounted rate of 30%. So it shaves off
people who had lent it domestically.
Yes,
basically.
It shaves off 3,000 shillings and says 7,000 is yours. Now this 3,000, come back for it in 3 years. The next 3 years is 0% interest, but in 3 years you come, we give you 3%. But it didn't stop there. They went to bank accounts because the threat of banks collapsing is huge. So they come to your bank account, they raid your current account, they do the same thing. Here they raid your M-Pesa and do the same thing.
What is raiding and doing the same thing? What does that mean?
It means that if you have a deposit in your M-Pesa of 10,000 shillings, they will take 30%, and you then have 7,000. So if you have a current account,
your balance suddenly becomes
7,000. Who is the sovereign?
It's you, the citizen.
How do you starve off a bank collapse?
You detain the cash.
You detain the cash, and that is coming to this country.
You know, I'm now very suspicious. Why for a brief moment couldn't Kenyans withdraw from M-Shwari? Did Safaricom bail out the national government with our cash and they were buying time as they see how to resolve the accounts? Again, why were we having rumors about a 6,000 shilling Raila Odinga note? Was it because they knew that the economy is about to crash and inflation is going to be part and parcel of us? So much so that we need new currency to weather the storm. Jumkate sooner or later itakuwa 3,000 shillings and so on and so forth. So you go on to produce a 6,000 Raila Odinga shilling. I'm suspecting these events. 300 billion missing from bonds. Pale M-Shwari, for a brief moment, people could not withdraw. Huku mnaongelea noti mpya. You had better not play with this economy. If there is one role of the commander-in-chief, it is to protect the people, their livelihoods, and the borders of the country. It is all about security. You know the number one role. Physical security, financial security, social security. That is number one. Even your right to worship is not number one. Your right to marry is not number one. Of all those things and tasks that the president has to oversee, the security of the people comes first. If we wake up, bonds zimeibwa, kwa M-Pesa wameingia, bank account unaambiwa vile Wanjigi anatuambia ati you have 1 million but we can only give you 700,000, 300 auguzi, tutakupea siku ingine, depending on how bad the situation is. If it's worse, it's the other way around. Unaambiwa 300 ndo tunakupea 700,000 na uguzi. Soon people will start putting money under the mattress. Hapo ndo tunaelekea sababu watu trust hawa watu. Now the second place where this money could have gone to is voter bribery. In fact, I need not say too much. Just listening to the Malava by-election candidate Seth Panyako exposing the ongoing bribery. Roll the tape.
UDA ikiongozwa na Faruk Kibet pamoja na Kevin Mahelo wameanza shughuli ya kuwahonga wapiga kura wa Malava, na Faruk Kibet amekuwa hapo Hamtua, na Faruk anakuja kabisa kwangu nyumbani kukuja kuchukua na kupea watu shilingi 2,000 ili wapikie mtu wao wa UDA kura. Mambo ya kutafuta kura yalisha jana, na sasa leo yale Faruk amefanya na Mahelo Kevin wanafanya ni kujaribu kubribe wapiga kura. Tuko na ushahidi na hiyo mkutano na video zimechukuliwa, na tayari nimetuma kwa IBC Malava kuangalia kazi ambayo Faruk Kibet anafanya. Kwa hivyo mimi nataka kuambia wakaaji wa Malava kwamba kama watakuja na hizo pesa vile tumekuwa tukiwaambia tu, nyinyi chukueni pesa. Kitu ambacho hamstahili kufanya ni kumpa mtu kitambulisho yako au namba ya kitambulisho chako.
And it's true, I mean, he's exhibit A.
Nana nataka mjeza.
On the flip side, what are some of the repercussions of this blatant looting, especially in regards to bonds? Number one is that banks and the private sector or private investors will stop buying government bonds. And you know what that means? It means they lose 58% of the finances they've been getting. Let me just walk you through the numbers in regards to how government bonds are usually purchased. Banking institutions, the biggest purchaser, 45.1%. This is the reason banks ukuringia when you go for a loan, because they don't really need you. They are doing business with government. Pre-Kibaki era ilikuwa loan kupata ni rahisi, but wanaringa because they are getting good returns from government. Soon that might end. Pension funds 28.8%, insurance companies 7.2%, other domestic investors 12.9%. So you do the 12.9 plus 45.1 and suddenly 58% could pull out. And I recommend they do, because if 300 billion is moving in the middle of the night, soon watu watalia. Hii serikali ikipata 2 term, hii yenye tunaiona hii, it'll be tears everywhere, including in those regions which are saying 2 term. Itakuwa tunalia sisi wote except wale wako majuu. But if you're having relatives back home, you'll be crying on their behalf. So let us not risk. These are signs and symptoms of having thugs in government. So rectify that anomaly at the ballot. Your ballot is your bullet. That is the only way to fight back. The way Kalonzo usema walisema tupige risasi kwa mguu, we piga risasi kwa ballot.
Ati black chocolate ni fine melanin bana kutoka nikapate. Kanapenda kenye mi wanapenda, so kanapenda toto chupa na haga nono.
Madam na kudai, umedunga mini na unapenda mangwai. Una dance fit, unawacha nikismile. Ama niko high, jua lies nice.
Kono moja mbele, gini yenderembe.